Hi, everyone. Welcome to Aerospace Chronicles with myself, Katrina Douglas.
And Bunmi, Durowoju.
We're back with you with another episode, and we have an amazing guest with us, Stephen Wilde. Welcome, Stephen.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you are welcome.
And I will say you are our first guest. We have promised.
Yeah.
We have promised that we'll be bringing guests on, and you are the honorary first one, and you will not be the last. But thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah,
well, I'm very honoured. Thank you very much.
It's great to have you. This has been quite a long time coming because we met you at Farnborough at a Midlands Aerospace event, and we sat next to each other. And when Bunmi and I heard your story and what you had taken your company through, Southbourne Rubber, which we'll hear more about in a minute, we kind of knew we had to speak to you. And this was even before we kind of launched this LinkedIn Live properly. It was last year. So it's great to finally have you on, Stephen. So we're going to give you a little bit of an intro. So Stephen Wilde is the CEO of Southbourne Rubber. SBR is an established original equipment manufacturer, OEM, of precision and industrial rubber and silicon. And Stephen's going to tell you a little bit more about the company as we go along. Impressively, their clients include Boeing, GE, Airbus, BAE, NATS, Leonardo, GKN, Babcock, Quinnick, Bombardier, and Magnox. So if you know, well, those of you watching this probably will know about the aerospace sector, but those are the prime key players in the aerospace sector. So honestly, it's wonderful to have you here, Stephen. I can't wait to get stuck into your story and the journey that you've been on with SBR since 2016 and that turnaround journey. So I just want to tell all of you watching. So Stephen literally turned SBR around, and Bunmi's going to show you the book and give you an intro to the book that we also want you guys to go and grab. But in 2016, on the verge of closure, Stephen took over SBR. At the time, the revenue was 360K and failing, and he incredibly has brought the revenue up to 2.7 million in 2024. And so you understand why we had to have Stephen on to really break that down in the times that we are living in. And again, towards the end, we'll speak about Stephen's thoughts on the current economic climate, the aerospace sector. But in a climate like this, it's invaluable to glean from the knowledge of someone like Stephen, who has turned around the company and continued to drive revenue throughout COVID, so that we can learn from these lessons. So yeah, over to you, Bunmi.
Yes, and it's a Stephen fan club. Let us just continue, Stephen. We'll let you know when you can speak. One of the things that Trina has alluded to is this fantastic book that Stephen has written about the journey that Katrina has just mentioned. And I can't wait to delve into actually your sort of mindset and reasoning for documenting it, because this is really, I sat and read it cover to cover. And even in some of the things that I've been dealing with, just like that motivation and the mindset that you've talked very clearly about the mindset that you needed for each one of the turnaround moments, was just absolutely fascinating. And I hope it's going to achieve everything that you wanted it to achieve. But again, the book turnaround and where you were when you thought, let me document this and tell the story as to how and why. I can't wait to have more of a chat with you about that, and for everybody else to get as motivated as I did when I read it.
Absolutely. So let's kick off. And so I'm going to really tackle the story in three parts. So first, where Southbourne was, where you took it on. So the past, the present, where you are now. And then we're going to look into the future and what the future looks like for SBR specifically, and then for the industry generally. So let's talk about where Southbourne was. So when you started, and what was interesting to me, Stephen, is that even when Southbourne Rubber was failing, it had customers. It had customers that were raving about them. It had a good reputation. So from the customer's perspective, and perhaps even from an outward perspective, the company wasn't doing bad. It looked like it was fine. But then when you lifted up the lid and you actually looked under the cover and you went in, you saw that actually it was not good. So let's talk about where Southbourne Rubber was when you took it on, and how you began that journey of turning it around.
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing is just a little bit of a step backwards, because I was actually brought in to the business to close it down,
Yes.
which which when I first walked through the doors, everyone was on a 3-day week. It was a terrible scene. The machinery was old, leaking oil. The people were had the weight of the world on their shoulders. Obviously, they didn't know what they were going to do. They're on a 3-day week. Times were very bad, and my first opinion, I think, in the first week was to close it down as fast as I could. And the picture on the front cover of the book is actually the picture I took in the first week there. It's a very kind of
Yeah.
pictorial thing of how bad the situation was. In 2016, a modern era of manufacturing, with 4.0 machines and everything else. And these machines were, 1950s, and some of them going back to 1927, actually, at
Wow.
the time. So to answer the question, what happened one day? I was walking across the floor, the production floor, fixing oil leaks, trying to persuade an aging guru who could fix the leaking machines to do a bit more for us, and he wasn't best pleased. My hands were slick with oil, and I went to the washroom to wash my hands, and on the floor I looked, and there was a pile of rubbish. There was rubbish everywhere, and there was a sort of a broken frame, and I picked it up and dusted it off, unwrinkled it, sort of thing, brushed it off, and it turned it over, and I was just gobsmacked. It said Airbus approved, and there was a list of components there. So from that moment on, my day changed, and then across the day, I managed to find about 12 other different pieces of paper: Airbus approved, BAE approved, Thales approved, Ultra Electronics approved, Rolls-Royce Marine approved.
Wow.
The following day, I went up to Wilco's, bought some frames, and I banged them into the wall behind my desk, because I think that they deserve to be, out in the open to see what was going on. It was a couple of weeks later when the group chairman paid a visit and asked me how the closing the company down was going, and I said, yeah, it's going okay. I've got plans in place and things like that. And I said to him, do you really want to close this business down? Because to me, there's a business here.
Yeah.
You could make something of it. At which point he said, well, what is the business? And then he sort of turned around and he said, is it the people? And I said, no, it's not the people. He said, is it the machines? And I said, have you seen the machines? They're leaking oil and an absolute mess. And he said, well, what is this business? And I said, turn around. And I said, look, on the wall behind me, those certificates and those approvals, I said, are golden tickets. I said,
Yeah.
I could spend millions of pounds and years to get those to form a business, and you've got them now. You really should do something with them. And with that, being that he's a very clever man, he then decided to double my workload, and said to me, well, in parallel with you closing the business down, we've got a shareholders meeting in a couple of weeks' time. Can you write a 5-year business plan? We'll present it, and if your ideas are any good, then we'll back you.
Yeah.
Anyway, roll forward 9 years. I'm here, and I'm on this podcast. So things went well. And the book is a tale of that, of what I went
Yes.
through. And to sort of answer a question, probably out of order, but the reason for writing it down in the book was that I've met people such as yourself, Katrina, which is lovely to meet, and I just sort of spill out the 20 minutes, and I spill out the story, and just before Christmas, I was up seeing some suppliers, and they took me for Christmas dinner, and it was lovely. And we sat there, and they said, "Well, so Stephen, how did you get into this business?" And I recounted the story. And I had got about halfway through my dinner. They'd finished theirs, and their mouths were open. And I said, "Well, what's up with you?" And they went, "Wow, that's a really good story." And the following day, 5.5 hours driving back down from Wrexham to Portsmouth, I thought, you know what, I should probably write that down. And then Christmas was the ultimate time. I was bored senseless, so I sat down and basically wrote the book in 2 days. So it's one of those things. It probably took another 2 months to actually finish it, but the basis of it was all down, because it's I've lived it and breathed it. It's easy, and what I wanted to achieve from it was that what I realised by writing it down, which was a really, really cool thing, was that actually I've learned lots and lots of things, and if I could put them down, and if one person benefits from it, then that would be fantastic. So that was my goal, and to be honest, I've passed it on to fellow CEOs in companies, and they've all been really positive with the feedback. I've got feedback from the likes of Portsmouth University and the like that believe it should be a sort of a must read for students going into business, which and that would be, if it gets into that, then that's more than I could ever have dreamt of.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And what I found, Stephen, and one of the things I wanted to touch upon you, it was the time in which you took to execute certain stages. And when I was reading it at the beginning, and I think this is what you can really only get at, you get it from meeting you, but you really get it out of the book, in that you had this kind of empathy even when you had the mission to close down the business. Because I was just like, oh, he's still supposed to be closing down this business and he's painting walls. He's still supposed to be closing down this business and he's having meetings with people and he's working through all of this stuff. Now, I know obviously there's some DD and due diligence that you need to do for closing down businesses and such like, but you were kind of going over and above because of your the empathy with the existing employees, how you wanted it to run. But what I worked out is that it actually gave you this runway to see whether there was some other things that just happened to come upon as you were washing your hands in the bathroom. But at one point I was like, he's taken a long time to run his business because he seems to really care.
Absolutely. And I think, were you going to say something? Sorry, Stephen, were you going to say something?
No, sorry. The connection just dropped there for a moment, so I was didn't quite catch the end. But we can, if you can hear me or not.
So Bunmi was saying that you seem to care, essentially.
I was saying that you seem to really care in the way and the process of actually closing down the business at the time.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that was based on the fact that my the people I work for, wanted to close the business down, but they didn't want to lose any money in the process of it. So, as the business, was struggling to survive, we were still trying to not make a loss effectively, and for within that, you still had to understand the business. You wanted people to do better at their job, and I think there's a good bit in the book where we've always done it that way, which is a wonderful mentality for people, and the thing was that we had to change, and there were people that embrace change. There are other people that don't embrace change. Some people don't like change at all, and there was a lot of wastage and everything else around what we were doing. And ultimately it affects the quality, and if it affects the quality, it affects the profitability of the business as well. And so the two are very closely together. So it was one of those things, and you've only got a few people. And bear in mind that I know when I joined, I knew nothing about the rubber industry or the processes or anything. What I did understand was customers, and the ability to sell things. And if people want things, then if you can supply what they want, then you've got a road forward. So in some ways, I was well positioned, but I think it was one of these things that it's all come about because one, where I was in my life, where I was with my experience, and also where I was as a person. And I've always been, like yourselves, Katrina. I think I'm always been fascinated with aerospace and
Yeah,
planes, and love going to air displays. And so
yeah,
to have to be in charge of somewhere where I can look out the window and anything that's flying, I know that there are several parts that have been
yeah.
made in
I
this
love
factory
that.
on it. It's just incredible.
Amazing.
It really gives me a buzz. And
Yeah,
it's some people say that if you enjoy what you do, it's not work. And I'm a big believer of that. So it's been good. There's been a lot of hard work to get here, and seemingly as the more we do, the more we've got to do. So it's never
yeah,
ending. But it's nice when you stop like this for an hour and you talk about it. It's really good.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Can I take a few minutes, Stephen, to talk about you as a leader? Because when I met you and we began to speak, immediately it became clear to me that you were a key differentiator for Southbourne Rubber. Okay, because I think had you been a different leader, the story may have been different. So I want to speak about some core attributes that you have and also exhibited. Now, the first one came across even in this interview when you said, someone at Christmas said, "Why don't you write that down?" And immediately over Christmas, you wrote the book. That's indicative of the impression I got of you when I met you, and also in the book, that you are a doer. And it's one thing to have ideas, it's another to be able to apply those ideas commercially. And so I want to point out that fact, and I want to speak to you a little bit more about that. And I think it was, as much as when you were coming into it, you could have seen it as a disadvantage that you didn't come from aerospace or the rubber industry. It actually was an advantage because you didn't tackle the engineer as the issue as an engineer or someone that had been in the industry and had all this history of this is how we've always done it. You were able to bring your commercial business mind. And I think that's a really important point, because it's one thing to have the technical capability, all the certifications, which are important. And I want us to talk about the importance of certification in aerospace a bit later. But it's completely different skill set to be able to take this business and turn it around commercially. And I want you to speak to that, the importance of business planning. Like, the first thing you did was have a 5-year business plan. There are companies in aerospace that have been around for decades, and this is not a criticism at all, because they're wonderful, they're brilliant. But the idea, they've never had a 5-year business plan. The idea of even putting a business plan together is just not on their radar, because we have customers that we've had for years. We have all the certifications. Why in the world do I need a 5-year business plan? So let's talk about the importance of, yes, having the certifications, the engineering talent, but the importance of, from a leadership perspective, having that commercial strategy and business mind. I know that was a lot, but hopefully, you can speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah, most people would have pushed the button and asked for a 50-50 now, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think as I said, I kind of answered. I feel I answered that a little bit in the last one, where I was in the right place, the right time, and I had the right background. I've just come out of a company, 7 years, where I was global sales, heading up the global team for people, selling into defense and brands all across the world, lots and lots of traveling, but effectively I was knocking down doors, and selling a product into all the major brands in the world, which was great. And you learn an awful lot from that. And in the book I kind of cover that in the passage called Tenacity. and
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the things that I've learned in my life, that lots of people, you take no and it hurts you, and it does, and it hurt me terribly when I was younger, and slowly I grew this thick skin where, a no wasn't a no; it was just another way to get to the yes, sort of thing. So, and I think that's a key attribute to myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I'd come out of a place where I was the person that was sent in to get the business when no one else could. So
Yeah.
I think it's understanding customers and dealing with them on a personal level as well. So when you meet people, they've usually got a problem, and it's how do you solve that problem?
Yeah.
And it comes in alignment with the other things that you said. So I'm answering it, but in lots of different
Yeah,
ways.
it's
But
fine.
the thing is, without those approvals, without those ticks in the box, the customer can't have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I was at a Make UK Defence thing earlier on, and someone said, "Oh, we're in Coventry, sort of thing, and we're in the car industry, and that's going down, so we're going to switch over to aerospace." And I thought, well, that's great, but you need to understand that you need a bit of investment in
Yeah.
your quality standards and things like that. And he's like, "Oh, we know we do PPAP," and I said, "You do, that's great, but you need to hire some people that really know what you're doing, because AS 9100 and the other qualifications are completely different to 9001."
Yeah.
And in some ways I feel sorry for the people, because it's almost like a lack of education from the
Yeah.
Yeah.
aerospace companies
Yeah.
to get people into business, and they need them. They need I'd use this term metal bashers. This probably as much as they call me rubber man, but you know because there's a big need for it. Airbus are ramping up. There is an opportunity, but it's about investment, I think, and preparing for that one known tick in the box. And now you need to have the AS 9100 tick in a box, maybe an end cap if you're doing special operations, and then a green credentials tick in a box as well, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're going to be marked down. And they take work. They're not give me's. They're not something you can buy off the internet. They are life altering pieces of things. We're working towards SC21, and again, that's at a different level. It really, the takeaways for the business, but it is an all consuming thing. You almost need a team of people just to undertake it, let
Yes.
alone do it. So I have great respect for anyone that has a bronze, silver, or gold in that, because you've done really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So Bunmi, I'm gonna hand over to you for
Yeah.
the next question.
Yeah. So I love the way you've just talked about the credentials, and you've talked about and really the way that you've approached it. It'd be really interesting to talk about the to extend that to the people, because you spoke really thoroughly around having some of the people. There was the lovely term Yoda, having the Yoda who was there at the moment, and that wonderful. I wanted to read this bit out where you said that he was the only link connecting the human technical knowledge to the company. And that's something that in the conversation that Katrina and I have had with various companies going forward, that they've all got a Yoda or someone who they should, or as you know, in the commercial industry, your key man or your key person, and that requires a different type of management. It requires some knowledge downloading. It requires some retention if possible, but we know that's not always going to be the case because of age, demographic, and what have you. So it'd be really good to talk about that, because I think anybody who's listening knows there's probably names pinging up right now in every one of their companies as to, we've got a Yoda, what do we do?
Yeah. So I mean, the answer to us was it fell in line with us needing another salesperson. Effectively, we'd got to a point where I was kind of like the lonesome salesperson, but I was kind of had my finger in lots of holes in the dam trying to stop the walls from buckling in and everything else. And so we needed someone else.
While painting walls.
And so we decided to go down, hiring an apprentice effectively, and that apprentice joined us. That's a story in itself, of course, but the apprentice joined us, and it took some time. I think you take an apprentice on, and it's an investment in your time and their time, and you start to see the results after 9 to 15 months, in my opinion, of that person is usually young. They're growing up. They're filling with all the information that you're giving them, and then they put a gloss and a shine on it that's all theirs. And that's exactly what happened with our first apprentice. And what happened was that they kind of dovetailed into working with Yoda, who was very guarded at first, as these people generally are, because knowledge is power, and you don't want to give it away and you don't want to share it. But after time, they became that they were actually trying to do the same thing, and they were working to the same goal, and it was very good. And actually what they did was they energized each other. And the apprentice, or Padawan, as I call it in the book, actually gave a new life to Yoda. And Yoda, being John, who's still with us today, is still, I think, he enjoys coming into work because he's got to work with two other apprentices now. The first apprentice now has gone on and is now our sales director. So it is a great story in itself, and I'm an apprentice ambassador for the Southeast Network, and I use those sorts of stories when I go into schools and colleges and universities and things to give young people a bit of hope and understanding that there is great opportunity out there. And on the flip side of it, I was at a Make UK Defence thing earlier on, and we were talking a little bit about the book, but mainly about apprentices. And one person stood up and asked me a question. He said, "Oh, look, we've taken on an apprentice, and we trained him over a year, and then he had a level 3, and then he left after 6 weeks. We're not sure we're going to take another one on." So there's two things there. One is the UK average success rate for apprenticeships is 51%, and I find that absolutely appalling. And here at Southbourne Rubber, ours is 100%. We've never lost an apprentice. Every apprentice we've ever taken on has gone through and bettered themselves. Therefore, they've got a level 2, level 3, level 4, or whatever. And some have left because they wanted to go on and do something else. That's fine. But 40% of our workforce is current, former, and new apprentices, and it's great. And the reason that we've got 100% is because we create an ecosystem for them. These are young people. I'm 40, 50 years older than them. It's crazy. And you have to create this ecosystem which is welcoming, which financially incentivize them and works along the rhythm of a young person today. And they are different. They are much different to us, or to me anyway. And the great thing about the business is that because we've now got 2 directors, 126, 128, running the business, it's young people running young people. So we've crossed that Rubicon of aging workforce. And yes, there's still some wise heads here, but we really are building a company for the future, and I look forward to many years' time looking at it in awe, being very happy about the foundations that I helped create. So
Stephen, thank you so much for being so eloquent there, because I really do think that you're bringing out a concept that I think aerospace industry and companies are aware of, but it feels a little bit uncomfortable to them, which is the knowledge and acceptance of how humans behave and what they need, right? versus the sort of the commercial drivers and the commercial levers. It's all very well having your apprenticeship scheme, but what environment are they operating in? It's all very well bringing an apprentice on, but how are we ensuring that the Yoda eventually is coached to a point where they open the kimono and they start sharing the knowledge? Without all of those elements, which are all human sort of driven elements, we're not going to get to the end game, which is what you've achieved, the 100% retention of a new, vibrant, future-led workforce in the aerospace industry. So I want to kind of like keep bringing that out, because I think people are shy to have that level of conversation, because we want to talk about accreditation, we want to talk about the deals, and we don't want to talk about the big names. But unless you have this layer of
I mean, it is something. So I'm an ambassador for the Apprentice Network. We had there was the annual Apprentice Ambassador Network, which was held at the Kia Oval in London earlier on this month, or it might be last month. One of the things that the ambassadors are all driven to is to incentivize apprentices joining, and they keep talking about SMEs as well. So everyone around me talks about an SME, and I go, well, I'm an SME. And one of the things that kind of got me was the horrific number that I talked about earlier on. So 49% of apprentices fail, and I just think that's just untenable. And the other thing is that, in the Apprentices Network, and this is not to disregard them because they do some fantastic work, but it's probably to more cater for companies and just give them that link and that help to retain their apprentices. So that, to me, one of the great things we should be doing is, yes, attract apprentices, but also make sure that 49% drops rapidly, so that you get more apprentices sticking with the knowledge. So it's about creating those road ramps and things like that to slow them down, so that they want to stay. And there will come a time, after when you're an apprentice, when you go, actually, this is really good. Oh yeah, I can see my wages rising. I can, my knowledge, this is easy. I'm enjoying it. All these sorts of things. And so I think there's a roadmap there that is really important, that is kind of missing in the industry at the moment. And that's something that I would like to sort of, add to if I can.
That's incredible.
I love this conversation.
Absolutely.
I love this conversation,
absolutely. The nuggets of wisdom are just absolute gold. Well, before we actually went live, you began speaking about the fact that SBR is indicative, or it kind of resembles what kind of the broadband industry, I can't remember, the telecoms industry kind of looked like, where in the 90s, early 2000s, you had loads of companies, and now it's kind of just Virgin, BT Connect type thing. And the rubber industry is a bit like that. Now, we know that the aerospace industry is full of mergers and acquisitions. Small companies often get bought up by bigger players. Now, how have you, number one, avoided that? And number two, how have you just managed to thrive and succeed and drive revenue when you have those big players who do have the means to kind of buy you? So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially, again, it's kind of documented in the book. But initially, when I went out to see the customers, I'd come from a company, and we were doing great things, and it was you go there on a sales trip, and then you do all the pleasantries and get the coffee and the morning sport out, and then suddenly the people would get a box out and say that this is the wrong color, you delivered it late, the quality's not great, and before you knew it, you would go in there to try and sell them something, and it was always a battle. And I think that when you go and see customers, as I did, there's those 5 initial customers, and the customers come back with you always deliver on time, your quality is great, we wish we had more suppliers like you. Then I mean, that is one big tick in a box. And what we managed to do to grow initially was, with those customers, is they were taking maybe 3 or 4 lines of different components, and now one of them was initially taking 5 lines, and today they take nearly 450 lines. It's a massive increase in that, and the fact is that it's the ability to make sure that your quality is always 100%. You always fail, and you always communicate to them, because everyone is late or does something wrong, but you've got to let your customer know that. It's no good saying, right, it's Wednesday, by the way, I was expecting that at 2 o'clock, and then 2 o'clock comes and goes, that they ring you up and you go, actually it's next Tuesday. You can't deal with that. So I think there's many things. I just turn it around and say to the staff and the people, I say, well, what if you were waiting in for a fridge to be delivered? Turn it around, make it real. Or the fridge comes and there's a dent in the door with a shoe mark in it. What are you going to think? And then everyone goes, oh yeah, I'll get that. So, and it's the same. We're delivering a service the same as everyone else, and a product, and it's just got to be right 100% of the time. And when it's not, then we've got to bend over backwards and make sure that we can put it right. And generally, we get that right, and it's been a winning formula. I would say it's the only formula. But it's driven us to success, and then you get word of mouth because you're supplying lots of things into other people, and so that's really how we've grown. And you look at the growth curve. It's we were growing 20% year on year, 25% year on year. COVID, we grew 7%, which was which was a disaster on my curve. But in actual fact, if someone said that an our Black Swan COVID event that I would only we would only grow 7%, I'd have taken both hands probably. And then the next year 25, 30, 39% last year. This year we're 50%. So the 2.7 is closer to 4 now million. So it is a great thing. And the forecast and the bits we're getting into are still onwards and upwards. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, quick one on that actually is that sorry, what was I going? Yes, you spoke again off camera, and it'd be really great to bring it on in terms of the segment of the market that you're managing to get all of this growth from. It's like, until you sort of say it, number one, Katrina always say like, there's loads, this is a huge market, but we say it like that, this is a huge market. It would be great you to sort of say that just actually be, and Katrina, this growth comes from just this portion of the market. If you can speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I mean the aerospace and defence markets that we're in are massive. They're billions and billions, and we're a tiny part of it. But as we discussed earlier on, in the 90s, the TV companies were there were 56 of them, franchises out there, NTL, Telewest, some of which I work for, and now we're left with BT, Openreach, and Virgin. So within the rubber and elastomers industry, there's a lot of coming together within the industries, and a lot of the big takeovers have been driven by investors, effectively people with money, and they want to see money, and large chunks of that business are not in their scope, sort of thing, and they want to get rid of it. They see it as loss making or whatever, and they just want someone to take it over. The great news for us is that it may be a small worthless £100,000 to them, but for us it's a great bit of business. And the other thing is that all those parts that are in that bit of business, they're still on planes or vehicles or platforms that are still about, and probably will be about for another 5 or 10 years. So it's a great part of business. We're happy to take it on. And it introduces us to another raft of customers at a different level as well. So some of the tier ones, tier twos are massive, and so you might deal with them, but you never deal with the entity. You're just dealing with a region within it, and they don't talk to each other either. So as much as you may be on a system, unless someone dials you in, you're never going to get found. So it's that bit of it's a bit frustrating, but there's opportunity there for sure.
Yeah.
Love that.
And I think what stood out for me is links to what Bunmi was saying, also what you've been saying, is that you carved out a position for yourself. You carved out a niche. And not only did you carve out that niche, but you became visible and you spent time communicating what you do. So one thing that I've learned in the industry is that when you go to places like Farnborough Air Show, it's really hard to differentiate what people do. And if you're not careful, you can be left thinking you guys all do the same thing. But what you've been great at is really carving out that positioning, making yourself visible and promoting that, which is quite rare in the sector. So can you speak about that and the importance of that?
Yeah, so I think I'm a big fan of marketing, and making it easy for people to see who you are as well. You know, as you know, and with yourselves, you know, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, communicating. You know, our Southbourne Rubber website, we started off. We connected it to LinkedIn, and I think we've just gone through. Our marketing manager Claire was very happy just the other day as we went through 1,000 followers on LinkedIn, which then leapt up to, I think we're 1,250. So we gained 250 out of nowhere. So, you know, it's a bit of a snowball thing. All these things always are. You start off very slow, and you know, in the book, I cover that with the patting of a ball, for example. You know, getting the ball to bounce. It takes lots and lots of energy, as it does with a business, to get it off the ground, and then as you get it up, it takes less and less energy. But your energy can be spent elsewhere, obviously. But you know, there is less sort of just physical energy to get it off the ground. So they kind of go together. I mean, you know, I'm this way around. The SBR logo, you know, we had this tired old logo. It had an arrow falling out the bottom of it, and my friend Bonnie, every time I looked at it, I twitched.
Stephen, stop. Can you talk about the arrow going downwards?
Yeah, so the arrow
I was
went down,
and I was turning it. I was turning it, but I was like, no, it's not going that direction.
Yeah. and the arrow went down, and to me it was like it's all the energy draining out of you. You know,
Literally.
Turn the book that way just to get my feng shui back.
so you know, the logo for me was a big thing, and the first thing I did was lop off the arrow. So I did that sort of just in Photoshop and put it back on the website again, you know, and then did all the paperwork, but then realized that actually, you know, the logo needed changing and what have you. And you know, the younger people, you know, within the organization now are horrified that we're called Rubber, because it's so niche, you know, and we do far more things with elastomers and everything else. So they'd love it to be called, you know, specialized, you know, polymer elastomer something or other, probably. But you know, we are what we are. So and the great thing is that it's our 30th birthday in June the 19th or something like that as well. So you know, it'd be a good thing to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's speak about were you going to say something?
No. I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking, the future.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting. He's still there with his t-shirt on, because we know what he was saying to us a year ago, and he's still got that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the future, Stephen.
Future, yes. Yeah, it's just getting interesting. So you know, we've got a growth curve which is you know, astronomical. You know, really good. And you know, to be honest, the contracts and things that we're now involved with, I don't see it slowing down. We're going to continue. You know, I think that by 2029, 2030, you know, this company will be, you know, probably close to 15 million. I would have thought. You know, it'll be a big number. We've got some great opportunities, and you know, we once we get to a certain size, I know that people who are waiting in the wings to give us business will, and it's all about us having enough mass effectively to soak up that business, which we're determined to get to. So bring it on. Yeah.
Incredible. So what advice would you give to other companies in the aerospace sector? You know, we're in tough economic times. I guess it's perspective in a way. I think you can always make money in any industry, but if we look at it at face value with tariffs and all that's going on in the world, it's tough times. And as someone that has come through tough times and come out shining, what advice would you give to other companies in the aerospace sector?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to look at the people, make sure you've got the right age groups within your business. That's been a big thing for us, and we've come out the right side of that by a long way. The other thing is to make sure that you've got the efficiencies within the business. There's a big bit in my book about being a busy fool, and it's very true. We thought for a long time we were doing the right thing, but we were doing completely the wrong thing, and we were just being busy fools, doing lots of work, not really getting any money for it. And so I think there's almost a time when you need to take a cold hard look at what you're doing and where you're going. And the other thing is, within the aerospace industry, is if you're not going forward, you're going backwards.
Yes.
And I think investment is key in new technologies and things. And again, in the book, there's a part where we bought a new piece of equipment, and the equipment, it paid for itself literally, the day we switched it on. So I think that if you take those three things as three pillars, you won't be far wrong in looking at your business sort of thing.
Yeah, incredible.
I love that. The digital transformation at all levels of the industry is huge. And I think often we just see the aerospace industry as this kind of like, Jetson, everybody's just like got their finger on the pulse all the time. But as you well know, and as you see, actually that does not necessarily trickle all the way down to the areas where it needs to be. The business processes, and making sure that we embrace technology to make those efficient, as you're saying, on the shop floor, those processes as well. So you've demonstrated that well. And any advice for us, Stephen? We're listening.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, because it's really interesting, and I always look forward to reading your posts on LinkedIn and what have you. And I have to say that I've not seen one of your online ones, so I'll have to make sure I stick it in my diary or catch it on record or replay or whatever it is. That'll be the thing.
Very cool.
Perfect. And I'm not sure who we have live, but thank you to those that are joining live, those who will catch the replay. If you do have any questions for Stephen or for us, do pop them in the comments. If you're watching the replay, still put them in the comments, because we always come back to the comments. And if there's anything for Stephen, we'll forward it on. So yes, while we wrap up, we'll just see if there's any questions that come through. But yeah, any parting thoughts, any parting comments before we sign off?
Just thank you so much. There, like the book is here. It is full of nuggets. It's something you sort of go back to. It is incredibly inspiring. So I want you to know, Stephen, mission accomplished there.
100%.
For sure. And we're going to be watching, and we're very close. We're not going to be far from what's going on from SBR. And we might be looking for the birthday party celebration invitation. I'm just saying.
30 years is a big deal. Wow.
Yeah, well, from me, thank you very much for having me on, and it's been really great to talk to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much for your time. And for those watching, thank you for watching. We are the Launch Strategist. We help aerospace companies launch their next level of growth. And so if you do want to get in touch with us, feel free to direct message either myself, Katrina Douglas, or Bunmi Durowoju, or visit our website, thelaunchstrategist.com. And before we close, we want to remind you to go and purchase the book. Yep. And if anything that Stephen has said resonates with you, if you need the services of Southbourne Rubber, the products, please go and visit their website and get in touch with them. Stephen, what are the contact details? If they are interested in the business, becoming customers or anything like that, how can they contact the business? What is the best way?
So the best way is just sales@southbournerubber.co.uk.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, we'll speak to you soon. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you so much, Stephen. And we absolutely will be in touch.
Lovely. Thank you very much.